you're not just reacting to life, you're lacking self-control. So your life gets harder because you're reacting without thinking. Okay, so let me explain this. You're allowing your emotions to take over on things and dictate what unfolds before you. So this can be very messy, to be honest with you. And today we live in a society that is emotionally driven. And I'm not saying that emotions aren't valuable, because emotions are valuable. They really are. And you need to process your emotions. But you also need to learn to control your emotions. You should not allow your emotions to dictate how you respond to things in life. Because if you do, honestly, your life's going to be a hot mess. And you're not going to design your life the way you want it to be. You are going to probably break relationships with people. You're going to have a lot of bad interactions in life. You're going to read into a lot of situations and cause yourself a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, whatever it is. You're going to walk around offended in life. You're going to think the worst of situations because you're allowing your emotions to dictate what is happening and what unfolds. Okay. So something that I think is important nowadays is for people to be aware of their emotions, and ask themselves questions like, why did this situation make me feel like this? Or why do I feel like this? Or, am I really thinking what's true? And, there is a lot of things going around right now about like the let them theory. And that is a great theory. That is a wonderful theory because it does take away a lot of the things that you're reading into, which probably aren't really true. And that is the first part of it, is just recognizing that sometimes your feelings are not fact. Okay. Sometimes your feelings are not always truthful to you. Okay. And then you can trigger a series of poor events in your life, which will create more stress for you, more drama, break relationships, create unhealthy ties with unhealthy people, all sorts of things, because you're allowing your emotions to dictate what is unfolding. So what I do suggest is, if you have a situation that happens that you're unsure of and your emotions are starting to welt up, whatever it is, just stop and think about it, right? And ask yourself questions like, why am I feeling like this? Is this truthful? Why am I feeling or wanting to respond this way? And what would be a better response? So if you can pause, ask yourself a few really good questions, right? The main one would be is, why am I thinking this way? And stop and think about what your response is, and then ask yourself, is my response healthy? Because you could get yourself pretty jacked up too and be like, yes, this response deserves this. And you could be quite angry about something, and maybe it's even valid. Maybe your emotions are right and you've read into something that's accurate. But maybe your response isn't going to be helpful for you or for anybody else in the situation, and it's going to make the situation worse. So how is that good for you is what I'm asking, right? Is that good for you? And I think a lot of times people could say, well, I was angry about this situation, so it felt good to just let out that anger. Okay, that's great. Maybe you can let out anger in healthy ways too, just so you know. And I think anger can be really healthy in a lot of ways. But lashing out at somebody or getting back to them about something or doing something crazy doesn't necessarily help the situation. For example, a lot of us get road rage nowadays, especially driving on the highway. I think that's a big one. And so say somebody cuts you off. I just had a semi the other day, kind of coming into my lane, almost hit my Mustang. I wasn't really happy about it. I can choose to lash back out at them. What am I going to do? Cut off a semi and slam on my brakes and have a semi rear end me. Like, that would not be very smart if I allowed my emotions to take over. Or I could go to work and have a bad day and be venting about how this truck driver did this and that. But again, that's affecting me. That is affecting my life. That is affecting my stress levels. That is affecting people around me in my day-to-day interactions. So that is not helpful, as where I could be like, wow, that guy's a bit of an idiot, and I could just go on with life, right? And acknowledge it, made me mad in the moment, move on. That is a healthy response, right? And so that's what I'm talking about. And that's probably just a silly, really scenario that I'm giving you, but a lot in day-to-day interactions, I could read into something that say my boss said, or a coworker, or, somebody didn't invite me for lunch, or whatever it is. I think those sort of things happen all the time. Or my friends didn't invite me and they went here. Maybe they thought you were busy. Or maybe they did leave you out for a reason, and maybe it's a valid reason. Maybe it's not a valid reason. Maybe you need better friends. Maybe you need to be a better friend. So stop and ask yourself those questions. Like, am I a good friend to them? Are they really good friends to me? Does my response really justify what's happening in this situation? And that is about controlling your response and being an emotionally mature person, which most people aren't, to be honest with you. Most people nowadays have the emotional maturity of a child. They don't learn how to respond properly. They respond similar to childlike behaviors. And I have a whole video on that. But what I just want to say is the way you're reacting, if you lack self-control in your life, life's just going to be really hard for you. And it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't need to be that hard. And so I just want to really encourage you that you can control your responses to things in life. You can have a great life. You can overcome obstacles in front of you. You can reduce your stress and anxiety in life by having better interactions with people. So I just want to leave you with that. Because I just talked about burnout, and I think that's also important too, because a lot of people burn themselves out emotionally because of stress, because of unhealthy interactions, and because you're creating drama and messiness. So I did a part 1 on burnout, and I think that's really important because a lot of it is just taking too much on. And I really believe that because that was the case for me. But I also think that there are people that live in constant stress because of poor behaviors and decisions, and create a lot of anxiety that burns themselves out. So I just want to leave you with that. You can change. It is possible. One day at a time, one step at a time. You can do that. You can design your life to have better interactions and to have the life that you really want. So I just want to encourage you in that. All right? Take care.